The movie opens with a couple, Liz and Malcolm, driving to a secluded cabin to celebrate their one-year anniversary. Liz is an artist, while Malcolm works as a doctor. During the drive, Liz recalls her phone call with her best friend Maggie, who is convinced that Malcolm is the type of man who is secretly married with kids and possibly having an affair. Liz defends him, insisting he would never do something like that, and mentions they're heading to Malcolm's family cabin in the woods for their anniversary. Curious, Maggie asks whether Malcolm wants kids. Liz admits they haven't talked about it and adds that she doesn't really picture herself as a mother. About an hour later, they arrive at the cabin. Liz takes in the quiet surroundings while Malcolm holds her painting, the one he bought at the art exhibit where they first met, and looks for a place to hang it. While exploring the cabin on her own, Liz comes across a box on the counter with a smear of frosting on the lid. She tells Malcolm about it, and he explains that it was probably left by the caretaker, who has a habit of leaving a cake after she finishes cleaning the cabin, almost like a tradition. Then she joins Malcolm and notices he has hung up her painting. He compliments her, telling her she's truly talented. Liz smiles as she walks to the window and notices another cabin directly across from theirs. Malcolm explains it belongs to his cousin Darren, whom he describes as unpleasant and an asshole. He assures her they won't be bothered since he didn't see Darren's car outside. Then Malcolm heads to the kitchen to start dinner while Liz blows on the window, fogging the glass, then draws a heart with her finger. Later, as Liz relaxes in the bath, a faint voice drifts through the room. She freezes, then calls out to Malcolm. He shouts back from the kitchen asking what's wrong.
Nothing.
Liz settles back into the tub, listening to the stream outside as she hums softly. Then she hears a scraping sound. She turns around, only to find nothing there. That night, the two sit down for dinner, and their conversation quickly turns playful and flirty. Just as they're enjoying each other's company, the doorbell rings. Malcolm goes to check and returns, whispering that it's his cousin. Liz isn't in the mood for company, but Malcolm lets him and his date anyway. Liz attempts to introduce herself, but Darren ignores Liz and instead introduces his date, Minka, a model who doesn't speak English. Liz immediately notices that Minka looks dazed, almost drugged, and Darren confirms her suspicion, casually mentioning that Minka likes Molly. Then Darren asks Malcolm if they can talk privately, and the two step away to another room. Left alone, Minka glances at the cake box and mutters, "It tastes like shit." Before Liz can ask what she means, Darren returns and tells Minka they need to leave. Before leaving, Darren tells Malcolm that Liz looks like a keeper and tells him not to wait too long. After they're gone, Malcolm checks on Liz. She admits she's upset about being treated like an object. Malcolm apologizes for Darren's behavior, calling him an empty box. Liz responds that the box inside her isn't empty. Malcolm agrees, saying it's filled to the brim, and adds that's one of the reasons he loves her. They reconcile, and Liz forgives him. They begin making out, but before things can go any further, Malcolm insists she try the chocolate cake. Liz tells him she doesn't like chocolate. Surprised, Malcolm asks, "Since when?" She explains she's disliked it since childhood and during the time they've been together. Malcolm apologizes, admitting he assumed all women liked chocolate, and urges her to give it a chance. Wanting to make Malcolm happy, Liz takes a bite and says, "Tastes like shit?" Later, around midnight, Liz struggles to sleep. She dreams of the stream outside. Then she suddenly feels someone pointing a rifle at her head. She wakes abruptly. Then, strangely, she begins to crave the chocolate cake, so she heads downstairs to find it. Once she locates it, she devours it uncontrollably. As she eats, disturbing visions flood her mind. Women screaming, their faces covered in blood. The next morning, Minka tries to call an Uber but gets no signal. She suddenly hears a scream and is violently dragged away by an unseen force. Meanwhile, Liz is sketching the visions she saw the night before, the faces of the screaming women. Malcolm greets her and starts preparing breakfast. While cooking, he notices the empty cake box and asks Liz if she's feeling all right. She simply nods. Then Malcolm tells Liz that his old patient, Mrs. Portnoy, is being brought out of a medically induced coma today, and the hospital might call him if her condition becomes serious. The two then head outside to explore the woods together. By the stream, Liz experiences another vision, this time of a woman dancing in the woods near the cabin. She then notices a locket in the water. She opens it, examines it, and eventually decides to wear it. Later, Malcolm receives a call from the hospital and immediately tells Liz that he needs to head back to the city because his patient is in critical condition. Malcolm promises to be back by 6 or 7. Liz understands and tells him to go. To cheer her up, Malcolm tells Liz to treat herself to a bottle of wine in the basement. He apologizes again, but Liz reassures him it's fine. After Malcolm leaves, Liz touches the locket and then drops it. The moment it falls, she suddenly feels like she's drowning, unable to breathe. Then, just as quickly, she can breathe again. Later, with nothing else to do, Liz calls her best friend. Maggie playfully asks Liz if the cabin looks like a fortress. "Hardly," Liz replies. She explains that the only lock in the entire cabin is on the bathroom door, and there aren't even blinds on the windows. She also mentions feeling strange, almost as if she's eaten a mushroom. As they talk, Liz notices a figure moving about in the opposite cabin. Maggie then asks about Malcolm. Liz tells her he's doing well and that he just left for work. Maggie crudely suggests he probably left to work his wife's feet. Taken aback, Liz asks Maggie what's wrong with her. But Maggie doesn't back down. She tells Liz she's probably the side chick, then asks if she wants her to pick her up. When Liz points out Maggie doesn't have a car, Maggie ignores it and insists Liz shouldn't be sitting in that cabin like a kept woman. Frustrated and hurt, Liz ends the call. Liz looks around and notices a pile of garbage in front of Darren's cabin. For a moment, she sees a woman's severed head inside, but when she looks again, it's gone. Sometime later, Liz wakes up from her nap and drinks some water. She's startled when she sees Minka inside the cabin. Regaining her composure, Liz asks Minka how she got in. Minka simply answers, "I'm inside now." Then a smaller version of Minka says, "So am I." Dizzy and slurring her words, Liz asks if Darren is with her. When she turns around, Minka is right in front of her and whispers, "Shh, you'll wake the children." Liz asks where did she come from. Minka replies, "From the distant past, and there is why the children think you're their mother." Liz jolts awake, realizing it was a nightmare. She notices she spilled wine on her pants and the couch. She grabs cleaning supplies from the storage room and begins scrubbing the stain. As she cleans, she hears a creak upstairs, followed by a knock at the front door. Liz approaches the door and finds Darren outside. He calls for Malcolm to open up and says he brought drinks to celebrate. Liz tells him Malcolm isn't here, as he had to go to the hospital for emergency. Suspicious, Darren says that doesn't sound like Malcolm at all, and questions why he'd leave Liz alone on their big weekend. He insists she open the door. Reluctantly, Liz lets him in. Darren heads upstairs, and moments later asks Liz if she liked the caretaker's cake. Confused, Liz says it tasted fine. He then asks if she feels sleepy. Liz doesn't respond. Darren invites her to join him for a drink. Liz agrees, and he remarks that Malcolm was right, that Liz is something special, not like other girls. Liz excuses herself to go to the restroom. While searching for her phone, she realizes she left it in the storage room. Meanwhile, Darren grabs a cleaver from the drawer and heads toward the bathroom. Liz hears his heavy footsteps and holds her breath. The footsteps suddenly stop. A moment later, she hears a loud thud. Minutes pass before Liz finally leaves the bathroom and walks to the storage room for her phone. She calls Malcolm, but it goes straight to voicemail. She leaves him a message saying his cousin was here. She asks him to call her back soon. Liz then hears music playing outside. She calls Malcolm's name, but there's no answer. Suddenly, the garbage disposal switches on by itself, startling her. She shuts it off, then reaches carefully into the sink, only to pull out Darren's watch. As she turns around, Liz stifles a scream. An old woman wearing a bag over her head sits in the chair. Then, just as suddenly, the woman vanishes, leaving behind only a cake. Panicked, Liz starts packing her things. She calls Maggie, begging her to come pick her up because weird shit is happening. The line suddenly fills with static, and a distorted voice cuts in. No, you are the mother. Liz freaks out just as the call cuts out. Eventually, Malcolm returns home, startled for some reason when he sees Liz. She tells him she called several times. Malcolm admits he didn't check his phone. Liz insists someone was inside the house and says she's leaving. Malcolm asks who she saw. Liz describes an old woman with a bag over her head and asks if that's the caretaker. Malcolm confirms that she is. Liz then tells Malcolm that Darren stopped by, left his watch in the sink, and left.
He seemed pretty fucking surprised that I was here too.
Liz starts gathering her things, saying the cabin just isn't for her. Malcolm nods sympathetically and asks her to stay just one more hour so he can drive her home. Liz agrees, but asks him to check the house to make sure no one else is inside. Malcolm gladly obliges. A few minutes later, he returns with a bottle of wine and apologizes again for leaving her alone at the cabin. "Because you're a dick," Liz jokes, still annoyed. Malcolm nods sheepishly. They make up once again. Liz playfully calls him a liar for promising to return at 6 but showing up much earlier. Malcolm shrugs, saying, "There was no traffic on the bridge." Curious, Liz asks if Mrs. Portnoy is doing better. Malcolm, slightly buzzed, looks confused and asks, "Who?" Then he quickly covers by saying the patient died with her daughters at her side. Liz realizes he's lying and excuses herself to the bathroom. Inside, Liz tries to steady herself. Malcolm knocks gently and says they can talk things through. Assuming Malcolm is married, Liz confronts him about it, but he denies it. Then Liz hears a faint wail. She looks down and sees a photograph lying on the floor. It's Malcolm, standing beside a woman and 2 children. Malcolm opens the bathroom door easily, commenting that it doesn't really lock. Liz holds up the photo and demands to know who the woman is. Malcolm simply says, "It was a long time ago." When she tells him she's leaving, Malcolm replies that he can't let her go and asks her to join him in the living room. There, Malcolm tells Liz that he never wanted her to suffer and that he truly loves her. He says what's about to happen is the most beautiful act of love a person can commit. Horrified, Liz begs him to go back to his family and leave her alone. Malcolm ignores her, explaining that he thought she would only take a bite of the chocolate cake, enough to knock her out. But instead, she devoured the entire thing. That's when he knew she was special. He goes on to talk about the women Liz keeps seeing around the house, admitting that he doesn't actually know what they are. Malcolm then reveals that when he and Darren were teenagers, 200 years ago, they saw a pregnant woman trespassing on their father's land, which included this very cabin. He adds that the woman looked exactly like Liz. He and Darren often watched her, naked and dancing near the river. One day, they shot her in the leg, dragged her to the pig pen, and left her to die, along with the bastard child she was carrying. Days later, when they returned to check on the woman, they discovered she had given birth to strange creatures. Malcolm eventually killed her, realizing she was a witch. The creatures then offered Malcolm and Darren eternal life in exchange for sacrifices. Trembling, Liz begs him to let her go and reminds him that he said he loved her. Malcolm nods and explains that's exactly why he left earlier. There was no hospital emergency. He just didn't want to be there while Liz suffered. Then he adds, almost calmly, "When you die, I get to live a little longer." Liz hears a creaking noise upstairs. Panic surges, and she bolts for the exit, trying every door, but they're all locked. She grabs her phone and tries to power it on, but it won't respond. Then a few droplets of blood fall onto the screen. Desperate, Liz attempts to climb down the side of the cabin to escape. But when she sees the creatures watching her from above, she loses her grip and falls. We then flash back to the moment Liz opened the locket earlier. The photograph inside revealed the face of the woman Darren murdered. Meanwhile, Malcolm gathers Liz's personal belongings into a box, adding them to his collection of prior victims. In a chilling tone, he introduces Liz to his other victims. In the basement, Liz slowly regains consciousness and sees strange, pale creatures shifting in and out of the shadows. One of them is holding the preserved head of the witch, the same woman Liz saw in her visions. Terrified but unable to look away, Liz whispers, "Who are you?" The creature replies, "We are your children." Because Liz resembles the murdered witch, their mother, they believe Liz is her returned form. The creatures begin to surround her, embracing her with a mixture of awe and longing. Overwhelmed, Liz lets out a shaky laugh as they wail with joy at her presence. Upstairs, Malcolm hears the commotion and assumes the creatures are killing Liz. He cranks up the music to drown out the noise, unaware of what's actually happening below. By the next morning, Malcolm awakens coughing violently. He has aged overnight, his skin sagging, his hair gray, his vision nearly gone. When Liz approaches him, he recognizes her only by her voice. Weakly, he asks what the creatures did to her. "They asked me to stay," Liz answers calmly. Malcolm insists that the land and everything on it belongs to him. Liz ignores his protests and brings him a piece of the chocolate cake he once urged her to eat. Malcolm refuses at first, but Liz is persistent, gently forcing him to take a bite. Defeated, he swallows it. "I loved you," Malcolm gasps. Liz gently pats his head. "I'm sure you said that to a lot of girls." Then, she releases Malcolm headfirst into the vat of thick honey. His face sinks beneath the surface, and he suffocates and dies.